Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Today's video I'm really excited to do. It's going to be a new ranking makeup video, and today I'm going to be ranking my face palette collection. So recently, out of my collection ranking videos that I've done, I did my bronzers and I asked what you'd want to see next, and a lot of people did mention face palettes. I did also recently do ranking new foundations, but those were the new 4 foundations to my collection. We know so many foundations are coming out right now, so I will also have just my ranking playlist linked down below. But I've been having a lot of fun going through the different categories in my collection too and ranking those. So today I have face palettes. I have 16 different products that I'm going to be ranking from my least favorite to my top favorite. So I have face palettes in here and also duos. Anything that has more than one category of makeup in there, that is what I went with. So I don't have like highlighter palettes because that will go in my highlight ranking video, but like blushes, no, blushes, bronzers, you know, contour, highlights, if we have multiples in there, that's what's in today's video. So I hope you're excited to see a new ranking video from me. Let me go ahead and get started. All right, so like I said, I do have 16 different face palettes that I'm ranking. The bottom 3 palettes, I put these at the bottom because I only use one shade primarily out of these palettes. So that is why I ranked them that way. And to kick it off, I have this one here from Hourglass, and I feel kind of bad ranking this at the bottom, but truly I only use the bronzer shade out of it, and I love the bronzer shade, and I just don't really enjoy the other ones in this palette because the next 2 that I have that I still only use one shade out of, I can still use other shades, and sometimes I do. I really just go into this one for the bronzer. So this one was the Ambient Lighting Edit Volume 4. I think this was a limited edition palette, I think, and it's a beautiful package, beautiful packaging, you know, beautiful palette on here. You have a nice mirror inside. You have 6 different shades. You have finishing powders, a highlight, 2 blushes, and then a bronzer. Like I said, I just use the bronzer out of this. I don't really get down with the finishing powders. I even have a mini from Hourglass that I try to pull into a recent Shop My Stash, and I just like do not use these. The highlighter is much too subtle for your girl over here, and the blushes I'm just not really a fan of either. I actually have an Hourglass blush also that I purchased when people were raving about Hourglass blushes, and I just am like, okay. So I mean, really, I'm just going into this one for the bronzer, but I love the bronzer out of this one. I just need to purchase, I would probably purchase a mini. I love that Hourglass has a lot of minis. I just need to purchase a mini bronzer and let someone else have this palette and get more use out of it than me. This is the bronzer in Filtered Bronze Light. So I don't know if I can find this exact same one, but I really enjoy this one because it's more of this glowy bronzer. It just kind of gives like this more satiny look to the skin, and I enjoy that so much. So I'm just a big old fan of the bronzer in here, but that's truly all that I use it for. So that's why that palette was coming in at number 16. At number 15, I have here from Kevyn. This is the Making Faces beauty book. This is chapter 1, which is contour. So it came in a book which I think it had 3 different chapters in there, if you will. There was like a blushes, there was some eye products in there. I have decluttered those, and I kept this around because I really do love the sculpting powder. I think Kevyn is very well known for the sculpting powder. This one here is in medium. There is the highlight in Candlelight and the bronzer in Desert Nights. I don't really love the bronzer too much either. It kind of pulls just a little bit too like warm, almost orange on me. The highlight is pretty, but it's a little bit more subtle than I prefer. So this one I just kind of think is all right there. So I'm really just going in for the sculpting powder, but I really do enjoy the sculpting powder, don't get me wrong. But again, that's why it's coming in at number 15. I primarily am just going into it for that one shade. And then at number 14, I have this one here from MAC. This is the Studio Fix Sculpt and Shape Contour Palette. Now, I primarily use this contour shade out of here, but I love this contour shade. It is one of my like most reached for contour shades because I think that it's so beautiful. It's so natural looking on the skin. I have used this one also as a bronzer, and I can use this one as a bronzer too. And you have some setting powders up here that, you know, I can use under my eyes, or I can use it to clean up contour or things like that. But really, again, primarily I'm just going in for this contour shade. I just really like really deeply enjoy my contour shade. But again, that is why those palettes were coming in at the bottom 3. I just don't utilize the entire face palettes, which I really want to do. I just really use those 1 shades out of each. So coming in at number 13, I have this one here from Lorac. This is their Beauty and the Beast face palette that they came out with. So inside you have a little mirror over here. Then you have 3 blushes and then also a highlighter. I have kind of kept this one around through all my different declutters because of like, I love Beauty and the Beast, so that's why I wanted to keep it. It's kind of like a nostalgia factor with like getting PR from Lorac, which was super exciting for me. I just really don't go into this one a ton anymore. I still enjoy it. I like all of the blush shades in here. Minus I don't wear this one as much when I've like really been heavily using this palette. I don't use the bottom one as much, but the highlight is also really beautiful. I just don't reach into it anymore, so that's why I'm ranking it at number 13 instead of higher. It is really pretty. It was also limited edition, so I don't believe that it's available anymore, but I just don't use it enough. It's kind of just like, ooh, it's Beauty and the Beast. I don't want to put it away. I don't want to get rid of it, you know? And then at number 12, this one here is from Zoeva. This is the Basic Moment Blush Palette. This palette I do like. I just, for some reason, I don't reach into it a ton. I like that we have 3 different shades. I use this as a contour. We have a highlight and then we have a blush. I just don't reach for it a ton, so that's kind of why I ranked it a little bit lower, but I do like this palette. I especially do like the contour shade out of it. I think that's really pretty. The highlight, it's not super subtle, but I don't know, I tend to want a little bit more of an oomph, and the blush I do think is pretty also. Again, I don't really have a lot of cons to say about this one. I just feel like I'm reaching for other face palettes more and more. Even some of my older face palettes are ranked higher because I just feel like I just fall back on them more than I do this one. So again, it's not a bad palette. I don't have like a lot of negatives to say about it. I just, you know, feel like there's other ones I reach for more. Coming in at number 11 is a palette that I initially, when I took all of my palettes out, all 16, and I put them in a row, this was one that I actually had in like my top 8, maybe top 7, top 8 palettes, top 6 maybe. And then when I was really going through them and thinking about how I was ranking them and why I was ranking them, I was like, why are you ranking that one so high again? I did love this palette at one point. I think I was still kind of holding on to that. This was one of my most traveled with face palettes at one point. I just had such high remarks to say about it, but I've noticed that I'm not reaching for it as much recently, and it's kind of one of those where I reach into it a lot for one particular shade, but I do use other shades. That's why I didn't have it in the bottom 3. But this one is from Pur. This is the Contour Diaries. If you guys have been around my channel for a while, you know that I like deeply enjoyed this palette. So you do have a mirror on it. Again, I traveled with this one quite a bit. I really did enjoy this contour shade, but I also really enjoyed this one here, and it looks like when I look at this palette, I can actually see the pan imprint on this shade, which I used as a setting powder on my under eyes, and it was a really nice brightening powder. So again, that's why I didn't want to put it in the bottom 3, because at first I was like, well, you just use it for the contour, and I was like, that is a lie. I actually used this setting powder a lot more, to the point where I can see the pan in there. I could also use this middle shade as a bronzer, and I had used some of these setting powders before, but this one really was my favorite. But even though I did love it so hard at one point, I'm just not reaching for it as much right now. So that's why this one came in at number 11. And then at number 10, this is a newer palette to me, and this is a very expensive palette, but I don't use it enough to be able to rank it higher. And this is from Natasha Denona. This is the Tan, Bronze, and Glow palette. So inside, I really like the packaging on it. I like the compact. I like the mirror. Inside, you have 4 different shades. You have a cream highlight, another highlighter, and then a bronzer over here. Or I think it's a bronze toned blush is what Natasha technically calls it. So you do have this little flap on here to kind of protect the cream product. And I like this one, but truly I did my Sephora recommendations, and you know, I recommended this one because I do think that it's a fine palette. You do get the 4 different shades inside, which is nice. I really enjoy especially this highlighter out of here, and I also do like this bronzer, but there's a mini that you're going to see me rank way higher from Natasha Denona that I just get so much more use out of instead of this big old palette. I've noticed that the cream highlight I just don't really love. I'm not a huge cream person. I was glad that there was only 1 in here versus 2 like some of her other face palettes, but it's almost like every time I wear it, I feel like even that cream highlight is just too dark on my skin, and it kind of just leaves that cast of like something funny's going on here. I forgot to say that I did film this look. This is Friday's trying new makeup, and I'm trying a new foundation that's like 3 shades too light for me. So if you're like, things aren't looking great here, girlfriend, I know, but we're testing new makeup. I'm doing it for you. So I mean, really really, let's be kind. I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, like, seriously, I am though. But that's what I noticed about this highlight. This highlight also is kind of dark too. I can really only use it with like a very like a loose brush or like a fan brush or something like that to kind of lightly apply it, because it's just a little bit too dark on me. Again, these two are definitely my standout from the palettes, but 2 out of 4 in a very expensive palette. That's why I ranked this one a little bit higher or lower. I never know how to say that correctly, but that's why this one is coming in at number 10. Moving over to number 9, I have a Nars face palette here. This one is the Veil cheek palette. So this came out for holiday maybe like 2 years ago. I don't think this one is around anymore, but inside you have 3 different shades. You have the Laguna bronzer, then you have the Lovesick blush, and the Surreal highlighter. I actually have another Nars face palette that I rank even higher because I like the individual shades in there more. Out of here, I was really just like continually using the Laguna bronzer. The Laguna bronzer from Nars gets talked up a ton. It's definitely kind of like that OG product, one that Nars is really well known for, and so I love that one. The blush I really don't reach for a ton. It's more like a bright watermelon and just not one that I go for often. I do like the highlighter out of here though. It is like a very quite intense highlight and I do like it, but out of here, since I just really don't use that blush a lot, that's why again I ranked it a bit lower, and I have another one from Nars that I like even more because I do use all 3. And then at number 8, this one here is from Becca Cosmetics. This is the Apres Glow Face Palette. Now we're starting to get into the palettes that I really do quite like, and this one from Becca is no exception. I use a lot of the 6 shades out of this palette. I think the packaging is really beautiful. I love the compact here. You have a nice blush, you have a beautiful highlight, or I'm sorry, bronzer, and then you have 4 highlights here. I don't use all of the highlights, so again, that's kind of why I have another Becca palette actually that is ranked higher. Out of here, I really like Opal and Rose Quartz, especially these other 2 highlighters, which is Icicle and Blushed Copper. I don't use them as much, but out of the 6, I really like to use those 4. But again, this is a really nice face palette. I've held on to this for a while from Becca because this was limited edition. Again, maybe like 3 years ago or something like that for holiday, maybe even longer, but I still really enjoy it. So continuing on with face palettes that I really do like. This one here is from Too Faced. This is the Natural Face Palette. So inside you have 6 different products in here. Again, a nice mirror on it, nice compact. It's a little bit hard for me to open sometimes with the clasp, but like really, really beautiful packaging on this one. You have 2 bronzers, 2 blushes, and 2 highlights. I particularly love the Sunny Honey bronzer. I think that's beautiful. I can use a Chop It Like It's Hot too, especially when I do have a bit more of a tan, and to mix them together is really pretty. I love the Pink Sand blush. A lot of times I'm going into this palette especially because I want to use Pink Sand. I think that one's really beautiful. It's actually the highlighters out of this palette that I don't use as much. I don't really love them. I actually tend to mix them together when I use them because I like that effect that it gives, but using them separately, I'm just not a big fan of. I don't use Pink Wink a ton either. Sometimes I can mix it in with Pink Sand, but really these bronzers and this blush right here is really why I go into that palette. But I really love those individual shades. Like I wish I had Sunny Honey and Pink Sand especially as individuals, and then I could pass this palette on because those are just some of like my favorite face shades to use. And again, just really beautiful packaging with this one here on the Too Faced. So that is number 7. At number 6, I have a face palette from Ofra. This one here is the Midi palette in Toasted Cashmere. I believe this was limited edition as well, but inside you have 3 different shades, a bronzer, a highlight, and a blush. I really do like the bronzer out of here, which is the Versatile Matte Bronzer, and then Rodeo Drive. That's actually the highlight that I have on my cheeks today, again from my Trying New Makeup video. It came in a different face palette that I just received from Ofra. That one's a really beautiful highlight. I do like the blush out of here also. It's just a little bit deeper on me. That's the Cheer blush. Just a little bit deeper on me than I prefer, but I really do like both of these 2 shades, and I really enjoy Ofra's face products formula, especially the highlights. So that got some big points for me here at number 6. And then at number 5, I have that other Nars face palette that I was chatting about, and I ranked this one over the Ofra because I really like all 3 in here. Like with the Ofra, like I said, I like that blush, but it's not going to be my most reached for blush. I actually really like the blush out of this Nars face palette. This is from their Private Paradise collection. This is in Montutan. So once again, we do have the Laguna bronzer in here, because again, the Laguna bronzer definitely shows up in a lot of the Nars face palettes. But this highlight and this blush I think are beautiful. I actually just mentioned this face palette in my latest Makeup Monthly video in my favorite section, because I think that it is so good. I can't stop wearing it. I really enjoy all of these. So especially over the other Nars face palette that I mentioned, I definitely get way more use out of this highlight and this blush. And then again, this is why I ranked it just a little bit over the Ofra, because I really enjoy all three products in here, which I think is you know, pretty awesome when it comes to face palettes, that you want to use all of the products in there. Coming in at number 4, I have a little duo here, and this one is actually from Too Faced as well. I did not expect to love this palette, this little duo here, as much as I thought that I was going to. This is the Pineapple Paradise Strobing Bronzer in Pineapple Sun. This is a part of the Tutti Frutti collection, and I really like, I guess here, I mean really from like 5 on was it? I really enjoy all of these. I would highly recommend them. I enjoy this one so much. You guys know I like smaller products, even something that's just a duo, but I'm going to use the crap out of both the products. I think that's fantastic, and I would prefer that over like a really large face palette that I'm not getting as much use out of everything. The bronzer is really beautiful. It's more of a glowy bronzer, which I'm really into right now. My preferences were kind of changing from matte bronzers to glowy bronzers around the time that this released. So I decided to grab it, and I'm so glad that I did. I also really like the highlight. It's more of a golden highlight, but it's beautiful and it's not glittery. It just looks so good on the skin. I reach for this palette so often still. This was a release. I think this one came out last summer. I know they're still adding more to the Tutti Frutti line, but I think this one came out last summer was when I grabbed it, and I'm still super happy with it. So at number 4 is this one from Too Faced. And then at number 3 is the one that I mentioned from Becca Cosmetics that I still really do love. This was actually in collaboration with Jaclyn Hill. This is the Champagne Glow Face Palette. This was limited edition. It's not available anymore, but I still use this a ton. So inside you have 3 different blushes here, and I really use this middle one as more of like that bronzer blush, because it's like a bronze toned blush, I guess maybe you would say on me, so I can kind of use it as a 2-in-1, just like that Natasha Denona. You have 2 beautiful highlights on the bottom too, Champagne Pop and Prosecco Pop. I just get so much use out of this palette. I have since I bought it. It was expensive. It was limited edition. I remember like kind of feeling ill when I purchased this palette, because it was so much money, and money that I didn't really have at the time to be purchasing a face palette. But I actually don't regret it, because I've used this one so much. I've traveled with it so much, and I've just been a big fan of this one. So coming in at number 3 is my Becca Champagne Pop face palette. Okay, so coming in at number 2, I have another duo, and it is what I mentioned earlier. It is from Natasha Denona. This is the Mini Bronze and Glow. I had a tough time between this one and the Too Faced. I really was looking at both of them, and I thought, which one am I reaching for more? You know, just which one do I feel like I grab for more? It was still really tough, but I felt like, at least as of right now, it's got to go to Natasha Denona. Pretty much every time that I am traveling somewhere, or if I'm just even going out for a day traveling into the next city, because I live in a very small town, so if I'm doing any shopping in the next city and I don't want to get ready right away in the morning as I'm leaving, and I put together a makeup bag, this is always in there. I always grab this one. It's so small and compact, but I love both of the shades in here. I do like this bronze toned blush more than I do in the tan palette that I talked about. So again, this one had to come way in higher, because I use both of these shades quite a bit. The highlight has quite the dip in it. I never know if you can see it on camera, but the highlight does have a dip in it because I've used it so much. But this is just such a beautiful bronzer. I just enjoy it so much, and it's kind of like that dual purpose because it pulls just a little bit pink. So I just think it's beautiful, and I really do like the highlight. Again, more of a golden highlight. This one I do feel like is just a tiny bit glittery, so I almost gave it the Too Faced over this one, but I still don't think it's enough that it deters me, and I still reach for this one more than the Too Faced. And again, you have the nice little mirror on it. I just love this little compact. This was $19, which I thought was great, and I got it with like my 20% off at Sephora. This is awesome to me. I enjoy this so much. And then coming in at number 1, if you guys have been following my channel, you know a face palette that I absolutely adore, and you haven't seen it yet, we could all say it together. It's the Smashbox Cali Contour. I just use this face palette so often. It's just kind of ridiculous. This is probably my most traveled with face palette. Like this one and the Natasha, I mean, these had to be 1 and 2. because that just is how it is. I kind of considered putting Natasha at number 1 just because I use both these shades and I use them a ton. But I really like having the different options in here, and there's times where sometimes even when I travel, I'll grab this face palette, but I'll still be like, well, maybe I want to use this single bronzer or this single blush or this single highlight. You know, I'll do things like that. But then there's times where, you know, maybe I forget to grab a singles of something else that I wanted to use, and it's like, no big deal, because you got them in here. Because in this palette, I have a powder that I can use as a setting powder, a brightening powder, a cleanup powder. I have a contour, I have a bronzer, I have a blush, and I have highlights. Like, that's awesome. A great mirror. I've gotten ready in this mirror so often when I travel. It's just such a handy little palette. I will say, out of all of the shades, I actually don't love the highlights the most. I definitely reach into the other face palettes. Even this powder here, there was a point in time where I felt like I kept forgetting my individual powders. I don't know if it's just because I wasn't like super into the like loose setting powder craze yet, but I would keep forgetting them, that I did have to reach into this one quite a bit, and it just worked out fine. So it's actually the highlights that I don't reach in for a ton, but I still can and I still like them. Just out of everything else, those are all, like, even the blush I think it's such a nice blush, just more of like this nude with a little bit of pink. The bronzer, the contour shade is beautiful. I mean, this just really is my favorite face palette at this moment. I had to give it to the Smashbox Cali Contour, coming in at number 1. I have to say, that was really tough ranking my face palettes, and I'm even looking at them like, oh, I feel like maybe some of you should have been higher, some of you should have been lower. Like, it was actually really challenging, but I did my best to rank my 16 face palettes. I would love to know what you thought in the comments down below. Were there any surprises? Let me know what you were thinking. I'd love to get your thoughts, and again, my ranking playlist will be linked down below. I'm also going to link some other channels that do ranking videos because I think that they're so much fun. So definitely check my description box if you want to see more videos like this. And as always, if you guys did enjoy this video, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up. I hope that you also consider subscribing before you go, and I will see you in tomorrow's video. Bye.